the one and only Geoff Weber, indie comic creator and Kickstarter extraordinaire. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Josh.
No, thanks for coming on the show. So you're exacting like your comic book creator. So do you write, draw? Like what's your whole thing in this?
I'm the jack of all trades, master of none. So I do writing, I do art, I do coloring, I do lettering, I do editing. None of it particularly well, but all of it serviceably.
Yeah.
Uh, on my most current comic, I am co-writing, I'm editing, I'm coloring, and I'm lettering.
So you do you're a bit of everything, huh? So
Yes.
so I'm gonna ask this question because since you've done a bit of everything, what did you do first, writing or drawing?
I was a writer first, yeah.
So you're kind of like me. You decided to dabble into illustration, and you just kind of like fell in love with it, or just like was it necessity? Like what was the thing with you?
I was always I always liked to draw, but I didn't necessarily start off drawing comics. I didn't really get into comics until I was like a teenager, and but I'd been drawing just since forever. And I had a bunch of friends back in high school who were all into drawing comics, so we started trying to draw comics together, drawing little homemade comics on 8.5 by 11 paper um, in our notebooks and such. And then we around the time that we got to college, we decided this was around the time that print on demand was starting to become an option that was available to indie creators for the first time. And so we decided to take advantage of that and try to get a small batch of our comic that we made, professionally printed. So we each did a small story and put it together into like a little anthology, and had that printed, and I loved it. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. I wanted to keep it going. I wanted to keep making another issue, like a second issue of this anthology. And some of my artist friends that I was doing this with were not quite as motivated as I was. The one was probably enough for them, and so we had a little bit of trouble getting everybody to turn in their second issue story in time for the print deadline to get it printed for a convention that we had to take. So I ended up having about 4 pages that I just needed to fill at the very last second in order to meet the deadline, in order to have enough pages to fill out the comic. So I had this short story idea, and I was just thinking, I only had a couple hours to do 4 pages. So I was like, well, I could just do like some stick figure comic or something like that. Then I had a little bit of inspiration where I took a paintbrush and I just said, there's no wrong answers. Whatever goes down on the paper, that's the art. And just go as fast as possible. The whole thing is just convey the story as simply as I could. I wasn't really concerned about any kind of finesse or technique. So I banged out a 4-page story in a couple hours, and when I was done, I actually kind of liked that aesthetic. I thought it had an interesting look to it. Something, it definitely looked rushed. It definitely looked rough, but it also had kind of a character to it. Kind of had an interesting uniqueness to it. And so I was interested to think, after this anthology thing was in the rear view, what else could I apply this to? Could I use it to tell like a full, longer story? One of the guys in this group of friends was also another writer, and he was an aspiring screenwriter. And we would collaborate on screenplays. We'd started doing that we started writing our first screenplay together back in 1997, and over the years we had actually written several screenplays together. So one of the screenplays that we just recently finished, so this was around 2005, one of the screenplays that we had just finished, I spoke to him. I said, what do you think about me trying to turn this into a comic? I have this, art technique style that I just kind of came up with so I could work real fast. And I bet if I don't have to be quite so rushed, I can take a little more time with it, and I can make it look even cooler. And he was really on board with that. And I banged out a first issue pretty fast. Not 2 hours fast, but maybe I got a whole 24-page comic done in a couple months, which for me was pretty fast.
That's actually pretty good, even by today's standards. It's actually pretty good. So, a couple ways we could go with this. So I'm gonna ask you to date yourself a little bit, and I'm sorry about this, but it kind of gives me an idea of kind of what era were you doing indie comics in. So what year was that when you actually did your first indie comic? Do you remember the year?
So that anthology comic that I'm talking about, that would have been maybe 2002.
Oh wow!
2003, somewhere around there. So and then
so just about so for me, like when I think of like the indie comic boom, I still remember there's two really famous eras now, and like the late 80s, early 90s, because in that era you had Stan Sakai, you had Kevin Eastman, Eastman and Laird for Ninja Turtles. You had people like James Owen, Starchild, Colleen Durant's of Distant Soil. You had Cerberus with Dave Sin. Yeah, so I mean, like that was a very famous era of people doing work, and they were the precursor to everything I think that's kind of come afterwards. And all of them have had amazing careers. Say what you will about Dave Sim, the ability to go out and produce the work he's produced, the length of time he's produced it, is an impressive feat, regardless of what you may think about the man.
The 80s black and white boom of the late 80s, it kind of created a paradigm shift for indie creators, mostly in the opening up and the availability and interest of the market. After Eastman and Laird had this unexpected smash hit with Ninja Turtles, which comic stores couldn't keep on the shelves.
No, and the thing about that era in particular too, like this was the quote unquote Kinko's era, right? Yeah. I mean, the Kinko copies. Sure. If anybody sees those old Ninja Turtle comics, you can still find them sometimes. You're right, and when you do, you're like, holy crap! But you gotta remember the era, right?
Yeah, and the comic creators didn't want to miss out on the next Ninja Turtles, so they were willing to take a risk on whatever indie black and white thing came across their desk, and they were and pretty much all of these black and white comics were selling tens of thousands of copies, and it was just a different time. We didn't have print on demand back then, but you could afford to do offset because you were selling in volume.
Yeah. So, and back then the distribution model made it possible. And so you were in your era, like the era is talked about very much simply because, well, there's definitely a lot of printed books from that era. It's kind of like in between.
Yeah.
The comic era, the comic books wasn't that the market had shrunk. The market was kind of rebounding a little bit. We were about 6 years away from like the Image era, which is like, and like I said, although the era where you did it was very important because with print on demand, none of the books that are happening right now would be happening without that era.
Yeah, print on demand was critical for us to even be able to attempt it. So it was a game changer for us. I would say that I think the hallmark of the era that I kind of started in, I think that was sort of the beginning of the webcomic boom.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it had started a couple years earlier than that.
It started a little prior to you, but the thing is, like, if you're looking at if you're looking at that era in particular, that particular era, a lot of the model, like this was right before Kickstarter too, like, which is the last missing piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. But the big thing about that era that's important to remember is there's still some great comics from that era, but it's more about the fact that it's the first time, like, the cost of printing since Diamond merged with mainstream shops was affordable again. And it made it possible for certain, like, if you go a few years down the road, I mean, there was some new Star Child material. There was some other new material from Dave Sim. There was new material from other artists because print on demand made it possible for some of these long properties to come back and resurface, at least for short periods of time. And again, that gave way. And then if you look at, like, from a historical perspective, you're looking at the fact that, like, you know, that was an important step. And the fact that comics were cheap to print now, or a lot cheaper to print, it allowed for the possibility of anybody doing it. So that was the first, kind of, like, historically, like, that was a cool era, even though it doesn't get as talked about as the 80s, or doesn't get as talked about as now. Because now, like, you look at now, especially, like, I can go on Kickstarter or Indiegogo right now and get a top tier comic, which is something that I think is amazing. Like, I can look at a book like yours or Wolf Moon or The Incontesting, and I'm like, wow, like, this is a really cool, like, thing that I was like, wow, I can get, like, these are books that are as good or better than what I can get at a comic shop right now.
The games that are, you know, have been in place all these times, that the crowdfunding totally levels the playing field.
Yeah, no, it does. It creates a different possibility and an interesting way to do business going forward, which I think is a very incredible thing. I mean, you would not have had this without, like I say, it's just amazing how the indie movement in comics has evolved. Now we're going to talk about you specifically, my friend. Sometimes when you're in a rush to create something, you discover gold, because it's like necessity is the mother of invention. And it sounds to me, based on everything you're just telling me here, that necessity forced you to kind of revamp how you told stories. Sure. Is that an accurate thing to say?
Yeah, I think it gave me the confidence that I would have the ability to even attempt something. Because sometimes the idea of doing a whole graphic novel by yourself, sometimes the idea of something just seems so big and insurmountable that you don't even want to try it. But if you approach it in a way that somehow makes it a little less scary or a little less threatening, then you look at it differently. You're like, yeah, well, if I do it that way, I guess then I could do it. So I think it was mostly necessary in getting me to take that first step and actually do it. Once I actually got in the thick of it, just out of the necessity of trying to tell the story the way I wanted to tell it, and to depict the images the way I wanted to depict, my art definitely. You can see this comic that I'm talking about that I applied it to. It's called The Scientist. This was my graphic novel that I published this past year in 2020, and it's a 180-page graphic novel. So you can very much see over the course of the graphic novel, my art style kind of slowly starting to change from in that first maybe 60 pages or something, very much in that kind of rough painted style that I was talking about. But then slowly it started to become more and more of a traditional, fine line style. Just as, my storytelling needs were requiring that type of image. So, but I would never, if I knew that I was going to be doing it like that from the beginning, I would never have had the courage to even start.
Well, we all take steps, right? Like it's not like right now, like I do drawing, like drink and draw style, like episodes every Friday or so thereabouts, and I'm just drawing, doodling stuff.
Yeah,
it's small steps. Now up the way, I'm going to probably try some more complicated things. In fact, I already am trying some more complicated things as time goes on, and because of that, like I'm like, well, I can do more with my work, and because I can do more with my work, there's that thing about challenging yourself. And for you, is like, okay, what story could I tell at the very beginning? So if you look at the scientist, that was what you could do, and it was, and again, like that rough style might be like really really cool. Maybe like you show that'd be a cool to the example of then versus now, but even so, it's like you did this in steps. And you didn't work. And what mattered to you, it sounds like it mattered to you, was that you told the story you told, right? Not that that was good or it was great. It's like, no, I got my story out there, which is probably the best training.
Yeah. So, so this was a project that I when I started it was before the whole crowdfunding thing, so I didn't have like a vision of how I was ever going to get it out to an audience. I was kind of just making it in what I perceived to be a vacuum. I was aware of the possibility of taking it to conventions and stuff like that, but that to me, again, in my mind, I had this vision of well, I have to have a finished graphic novel, and that just seemed like such a faraway thing. So, I was motivated to not give up, but I wasn't like motivated to like just, pour every waking minute into it. So I worked in very small bursts over a very, very long period of time. So this whole thing ended up taking me 15 years, actually. But it was not like 15 years of continuous working. It was like, I'd work for a couple days, and then I wouldn't touch it for 4 months. Then I'd work for a few days, and then nothing for 6 months.
Well, like you said at the very beginning, like you felt you were working at it in the vacuum, like you cared about it because it never left you.
Yeah.
But when you don't know exactly how the end goal was going to look like, and also you're growing, like you're not just like. I don't necessarily like I'm working on building a finished project, but that's not exactly what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is I'm just crafting a story the best I can in this moment, in this time. So it took a while for it to really get the traction because the tools weren't there to necessarily release the story at the time. And and two, it was more like this was fun for you. It wasn't necessarily it changed. I'm imagining somewhere along the way it became something more. But when you started, like you had no clear direction where you wanted to do with it, right? You wanted to tell that story, but you weren't sure where to go from there at first.
Sure.
And you were growing as an artist yourself. So it was like I'm learning, but there was no like, oh, I can do this now. Now, I'm sure that changed probably in the last couple of years when you start seeing, oh, crap, I can put this on Kickstarter. Oh, crap.
Yeah.
There's a way to do this. Oh, shit, I better be good at this now. I better get on my ass.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having crowdfunding and actually seeing like the thing that I make end up in a reader's hands, it changes everything. The way I craft a comic page is, now that like I know for sure, people are going to be buying this when I'm done. It's a totally different experience.
Oh yeah, because now you're just like, you're now it's a story, right?
Yeah.
Now you're like you got a potential audience, and that's a very different. Hold on here, I'm just actually seeing about attracting some more people to come watch us because that would be cool. But I live as we go. But I mean, basically, what you're talking about is suddenly you had an audience, And every story, no matter what we tell ourselves, let's be honest, we want our stories to be read. Let's be real, right? Now you don't necessarily need the biggest audience in the world, but you don't just want it to be your mom. I'm not saying like your mom would read the book exactly, or would or wouldn't read the book, but it's more like, I don't want that. I want an audience that really wants what I'm offering. And that's a bit and when you suddenly had that possibility, right? You know, that's pretty much what happened, right? Like you suddenly had it, and now the story had another dimension. It's like I have people to play off of, and suddenly Geoff Weber levels up and goes comic creator extraordinaire. Am I right, or am I right?
For sure. My mom did eventually read the comic, although it took quite a bit of nagging.
Yeah, you don't want, like, don't get me wrong. You you want your family to enjoy what you do, but that's not the audience you want when you're putting something out there. I mean, yeah, you like hearing it, but hearing from your mom or your dad or your sibling, you did a good job, right? It's for some strange reason it's harder to take that in like with any real context, because it's like it's your family. Even if you suck, they'd still say you did a good job, right? And you're kind of like, I feel like an imposter. I feel like this is like, um, this isn't like real, and it's like, eh. But when a stranger comes up to you out of nowhere and says you did a really good job, that's a damn cool feeling. Like, that's just a really, really cool feeling.
So this is the scientists. So this is the graphic novel, and you can see,
yeah,
it's pretty substantial, and
it's a big book.
some of the earlier, like the painted art that I was talking about, and then as it gets later, you can kind of see it's like much more refined.
You've gotten more confident in your line work too. You can see it. Like you got a lot more comfortable as time went on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, more detailed, more confident, and you nailed it, that something did change for me during the creation process in terms of like my motivation.
Yeah.
I started this in 2005, and in 2007, Trent Beckett, who was the co-creator, co-writer, he passed away. So at that point, I had sort of like the motivation of just, I wanted to finish it sort of as like, a memorial to his creative efforts, and a way to kind of keep him alive. You know what I mean?
You're a good buddy. He was a good friend then, I take it.
Oh yeah, we've known each other since we were in high school. So
that's a cool motivation. I've never had that, like, co-writing. I don't really have much experience with that, so I can't like, I've collaborated with people I'm real big fans of, but nothing quite like that. Like if everybody I've collaborated with is still alive and kicking, so it's like it's never like that kind of like a bad thing. But it sounds to me like a good friend. You wanted to make an impact, and also it kind of, although like I said, you weren't sure where it was going at like a particular point in time. You're like, I gotta finish this, because at least it's not just my story; it's his too.
Yeah, and it was definitely it was that when you make like a promise like that, it kind of gives you that extra little kick to just, anytime I was maybe thinking about, oh, I'm going to start some new creative project, and always there at the back of my mind was, well, you got to finish the scientists first. So I just always kind of had that as like a tunnel vision on myself, where I wouldn't let myself start any other project until I'd finished this. So,
ooh, that's a toughie. That's a hard one, because I'm always like, me personally, I'm always working on like two different, right, and then on top of my podcast, right? So, I don't know if I could do just one project. Like I haven't like I'm always doing something, right? And but So the book's done, right? Like done. So I'm gonna ask.
It's
Yeah.
done. It was very like getting it done was a weird feeling because it was like the first time in as long as I could remember that I didn't have this hanging over my head to have to finish this, and suddenly all of these other my little Google Doc list of all these other ideas that I'd kind of pushed to someday. Suddenly that someday became today, and now I could have my pick of whatever I wanted to do next. It was a weird but liberating feeling.
It was almost like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got here, right?
Yeah.
Because this has been with you for so long. You're like, I don't know if I'll ever see you. Because I mean, there had to be a point in the process where you're like, what am I doing? I mean, it's such a real thing. Because here's the thing, right? I mean, this goes back to the very beginning when we talked about like doing anthology for the first time.
Yeah.
Your friends realize, holy shit, comics are hard, and they are. Especially if you're doing all the work. It takes a very incredible amount of dedication. Like personally, our creator I'm a big fan of is Terry Moore, because Terry Moore every month, or like he usually does a series a year, and it's not always like, I think it's like 10 issues in 12 months, something like that. Like he does a pretty consistent schedule of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you get it, and you get his runs and his work, and he's writing, he's drawing, he's illustrating, he's just constantly putting the work out there.
I think if you don't A, love it, and B, are very motivated, then it's not for you.
Oh no, it's a process, right? And I've seen some people that put it all together, and there's some great books like from people that have done it from start to finish. I'm sure yours is amazing. I haven't read it yet, so I can't really talk. We'll talk about your Kickstarter and why you chose that project, like because you did it, and now you're doing your own things. And this is almost like, so I want to ask this question. This is an interesting one, I think.
Yeah.
One, like you finished the story, and although you told most of it, I'm pretty sure, considering where it started and how it ended, like the majority of your story voice is yours. But your friend was a big part of that story, regardless of how much you did or how much he did or whatever the case may be. The next book is all yours. Did that scare you? When you got there?
It did scare me to go off on my own, and that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah. It's like, nope, I'm not.
So this next book, the one that is currently on Kickstarter, Bug Hunt, I actually went back. So The Scientist was the last script that we wrote together. And for the next one, I actually went back to the first script that we wrote together, which was called Bug Hunt. But it was one that we never finished. So it's we got about half of it written. So I always liked the half that we had gotten started. I always thought we had something there. I always wished that we had finished it, but that was a case of we were giving into that impulse of having a new idea and moving on to the new thing, and leaving and just not finishing. I think a lot of creators can probably sympathize with that.
Learning to finish is a big skill. I think the one thing about freelancing is it refined that skill a little bit for me, because it's just like, okay, I gotta get something done or I don't get paid, right? And that's a very, I mean, that sounds like a very cutthroat way. It is a very cutthroat way to learn how to finish a project, but that's how you do it. Mm-hmm. And there has to be a moment where you say, you know what, this story is told. Yeah, I can do more with it, but there's a point where I just was like, nope, can't anymore. Like just can't. I have to move on to the next story, whatever that is.
But I learned, a lot about storytelling. I learned a lot about comic making over the course of creating The Scientists.
Oh yeah.
And so it'd be impossible to not do something for that long and of that scale and improve in your skills. And So I wanted to take all that and pour it into this unfinished project because this seemed like the perfect opportunity to sort of, rectify this unfinished project that was always kind of nagging at me. And it also addressed that other thing that you were talking about, which was that fear of going off on my own. I kind of had this feeling of, well, how many of the people that liked the scientists just liked it for, the voice of my friend coming through the script, and how much of it was, my contribution. So
you're still kind of going back to the smack a little bit. I mean, but is you still your friends? It's still your friends.
So
a bit of your friend's story.
So I wasn't quite ready to get rid of, I guess, call it a crutch or whatever.
Well, no, it's not. No, it's not even necessarily a crutch. So there's a couple ways yeah, we acknowledge there's a fear of like, okay, what do I say on my own that's worth saying? I mean, and that's a fear that I think every time you do a new project, I think the honest truth is, you have to figure out what to say that you really give a shit about. And that's a very hard thing every time because, okay, I don't know how much of a prose guy you are. Right? I'm a big prose guy. Hey, Doris. Right? I like the thing is, as a prose guy, I'm a big Ray Bradbury fan. I love Ray Bradbury. Right? Bradbury's amazing. He's awesome. He does all kinds of cool things. But the thing about Ray Bradbury is, you look at him at the start of his life and the stories he wrote then, and you look at the end of his life and the stories he wrote then. You can look at the fact that he struggled saying something new at the end of his life. Now, again, he's an old man. I mean, at that point in his life, he doesn't give a shit. Like, even if he's saying the same stuff he said when he was younger, that's Ray Bradbury. This is who he is. And at this point in his life, no one's going to say like boo. But I would be lying to you if I said that if I read Dandelion Wine versus say Quid Pro Quo, like the last collection he released, if I thought that Dandelion Wine wasn't better, it's because there was something really organic and pure about that voice. You don't necessarily need to be the most skilled person. Your passion comes out, I think, when you say something you really care about. Anyone, the hardest thing for a creator to come to terms with is, okay, scientists you're really passionate about because it's your friends. You and your friend, you made a promise.
Yeah.
This time, you didn't make a promise to your friend. No. This time, and that's the thing. That's the big difference. This is a story you still want to tell.
Right.
But I think so. There's two ways of looking at this. One, still a little tepid about going on your own. I think that there is some honesty there because of what we acknowledged earlier. But I also think there's another reason, and I think it's this: your friend meant a lot to you.
Sure.
And when you take an old concept that both of you worked on, and you put it together, I mean, it's also a way of kind of reconnecting with your friend. Sure. Is that fair?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, I think I felt it most strongly like in those first few years of working on the scientists, as time heals your wounds, and then it just becomes more about the work. But I do still feel his presence, and he had a very distinct voice that I think does shine through in his writing. His way of, he had a way of saying stuff that, I just wouldn't think to say it like that. Our brains just work differently. I think I'm a pretty good writer in my own right, but I just would come up with a different thing.
And that, right?
So I really, appreciated having that sort of unique perspective that, took me in directions that I would never have thought to go in.
So it also kind of sounds. So maybe I'm being a bit of presumptuous. If I am, don't like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. but you wouldn't mind more collaboration with other people down the road again. It sounds to me like um again, as you pointed out, like there's people like Terry Moore, Jimmy Robinson's another one. Like Beth Wagner, someone I know that she does it too. Like she does all the work on her own. That's not for everybody, right? Even if you have all the skills, you're like, I don't want to write this script this month. I don't want to letter this book right now. And I'm cool with illustrating. I'm cool with color if I need color, but you know what? I don't really want to do everything. I would love if someone came in and added their vision to the story.
Yeah, I absolutely do enjoy, and I get a lot of energy out of that collaborative process for sure.
Yeah.
And because as I mentioned, Bug Hunt was a script that was only 50% complete. So I can get, right now I'm kickstarting issue 1. I could probably get, maybe 2 or 3 more issues out of what's already written. But then there's a lot of missing pieces that I'm going to have to fill in from out of my own head. So I've been thinking very much about bringing on an editor with me that I can kind of help to get back to that sort of creative process that I feel comfortable with.
Oh, that's hilarious to bring that up, because I've been actually starting getting to. I'm not going to throw my name just for the hell of it in there. I mean, but I'm just like, I got my first editing comic gig literally later this month. So it's like I'm kind of excited to do it. I love comics, so it's kind of a thing. But it sounds to me like you want a bit more of a collaborator. You enjoy working on your own, but you want that, like, you kind of want that band feel of, hey, I got someone to bounce my ideas off of.
It's also that I think I get energy from it. I get motivation from it. I think part of the reason why I was able to do, like how I said I did those first 24 pages of The Scientists relatively fast compared to the rest of the book, I think was because I was getting that, quick feedback, every time I'd finish a page. And I got a little bit of that sense on Bug Hunt, because I'm not handling the art on Bug Hunt. I'm handling the colors and the layouts, which I guess is art. But I'm working with an artist, and I didn't have all of the script and all the layouts ready when we started. I was kind of doing them page by page. So what I would do is I would prepare a couple pages of the script for this artist, Joe Wong, and I would draw a thumbnail layout of each page in a rough version of my style of just how I envisioned it. I felt that was a more efficient way to communicate what I was looking for than to try to give him big blocks of text trying to describe every little detail.
You have so you Keith Giffen fan by any chance?
I am a Giffen fan, yes.
Yeah, that's what he does. That's what he
does.
He does something very similar with his scripts. I sought to see him. So little known fact about Keith, he's most famous for his Justice League run, and rightfully so. But where I discovered Keith Giffen was his Magnus Robot Fighter run for Valiant back in the days when Valiant was going down. So one of the back issues, they actually showed an example of his layout script, like just how he would lay out stuff, and it was like, and you look at the finished comic, although there are some huge differences, every artist brings their own interpretation to what you present to them. Yeah. You could tell that the layouts played a huge sense of the structure of the story. So
on Lobo, Giffen was credited with script and layouts. With Bisley on the art, and I was watching some people kind of do a page by page analysis of the Lobo comic, and they were commenting how the storytelling in this Lobo comic was really, structurally way different than some of the stuff that Bisley had done on his own. Bisley's a fine artist in his own right, but like having Giffen, whose visual storytelling skills are very strong, to help structure Bisley's art really sort of elevated it.
Well, because what's happening is you're kind of merging up two art styles. I don't know what Wong's art style is compared to you, but he's bringing his own interpretation into it as well. And I'm sure sometimes he's come to you with something you're like, "Whoa, that's really cool." But the thing is, you have a groundwork kind of the base off of. So for him, he's got a structure to play with. For you, you have someone that can bounce off your structure and still push you in directions you wouldn't necessarily have found on your own. And that's a really cool collaborative process. Yeah. And I mean, the other book, he doesn't get necessarily as much credit. He gets credit for it, but he doesn't get the official credit on the credits of the book scripting right away, is 52. Way back when DC did 52, he was, I mean, Giffen can write, but he was doing the breakdowns and the layouts of most of the 52 issues to give a sense of coherency. You're doing a weekly comic, you need someone to come in and give it a little cohesion. And he's a big part of that. Like, there's different artists doing the story. His layouts are a big part of why that series works. It just it's not done in every comic, and I can see why too. Some artists just work better on their own. But at the same time, when that collaboration is possible, it's almost like you're taking two colors and you're mixing them all the time. And it creates a very interesting spectrum, or it's like taking two flavors of ice cream and putting them together. It creates a different experience than what you would get on your own.
Yeah. And, just the way he frames it and, does the poses is not quite how I would have done it, but the bones of it are there. Like if you compare his art to my layout, you can totally see how they fit together.
And you dig in that process?
Yeah, it's been great. It took a couple pages of trying different things before we kind of fell into this, but then it does because it is a little bit more involved than just handing him a description of telling him what happens. It takes me a little more time, so I've actually run into the situation where he's actually drawing the pages faster than I'm getting the script and layouts ready for him to draw the next ones. So,
which is an interesting problem to have, especially if he knows the story beats, he can do that.
Sure.
And sometimes they come up with something better than you imagined. Too.
So he'll turn in 2 pages and he'll come to me and be like, "Okay, I'm ready for the next pages." I'm like, "Oh, I'm still working on them." But that speaks back to what I was telling you earlier about how I get like that energy and that motivation. If I'm just left to my own devices, I might, drag this out for months. But knowing that there's somebody that's waiting on me to be able to continue what they're doing, lights a little bit of a fire under me to keep going. So we got this issue of Bug Hunt drawn, in just a few months compared to the years I spent on the Scientists.
You're gonna have more books out before you know it. Like you might get to your second issue before the year's out at the rate you're going. Then it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be doing an anthology project after Bug Hunt, so I'll be getting to the second issue of Bug Hunt
early next year.
Yeah, in the middle of 2022.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like you got a plan and you got that collaboration. That's what you want. So you're going to kind of build your own universe and kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that sounds awesome, man. Congratulations. And okay, I'm not going to say the project's easy because every project is a little different, but I'm going to say learning what you did with the Scientist. Does it make it does it feel less daunting to do a comic now that you've done that? Like You started the book earlier. That book's a monster. Like from start to finish, like that took that. Even if you had gone nonstop, that probably would have taken most people a couple years to do.
I
right?
I knew I did. I don't have another scientist in me. That was
Yeah.
a once in my lifetime thing. Just I'm not going to spend 15 years, another 15 years.
Oh no, yeah, I don't think you would. I don't think. How do I put this? I don't think a book like that would take you 15 years to do again. Right?
No, it absolutely wouldn't. If I were starting from where I am now at my current ability level, comic making level, yeah, I could absolutely get the scientist made in, let's say, 2 years.
I think 2 years is reasonable for a book that big, but even so, it wouldn't be the same. Like you couldn't do what you did. Like the first book was necessary for you to get better. Now it's like it's about stories you want to tell and how fast you can tell them. How big is a single issue? Like how many pages is a single issue?
Bug Hunt is going to be a 24 page issue, so pretty standard issue. I'm anticipating the whole story is going to be 5 issues, but that is at this point just an estimate because the ending is still to be written.
Do you know what the ending is?
Yeah, I have an outline for the ending.
Okay, so you know where you're going. So
and the missing pieces are it's missing pieces like sort of like missing puzzle pieces. It's not necessarily missing like it wasn't necessarily written in linear order. So there's chunks of the story from the third act that are already written, and there's chunks in the second act that are missing.
But no, which makes sense. Like you have and here's the beautiful thing too. If you do discover a new vein somewhere along the way, you can go veer away from it. I mean, the cool thing about an outline is you have this ability to follow it all the way to the end. But there's also this ability to you may not want to change it too much because again, it is not just your script. But at the same token, it's like if I discover something really cool along the way. That there's a really interesting story I can tell in this story, you might do that because it is your baby. And the cool thing about comics is now it might take longer than 5 or 6 issues if you do that.
Sure.
Right. But the advantage of that is you can like because you have an outline. It also sometimes having that compass gives you the ability to throw it away. Sometimes. Yeah. I'm not saying every time, but sometimes I know where this goes. I found something better. Or nope, that's a rabbit hole. I'm sticking with my plot. I'm going all the way through.
And also having these blank pieces of the puzzle that are not filled in, gives me a lot of room and flexibility to go in new directions. And I don't necessarily have to try to force the other pieces that are already written to fit. Oh. They don't fit with, the new stuff that I'm writing. That maybe I like that more.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's the thing, right? And because you've told the story once before, you know how to get to an end of the story now again. So now it's like, okay, I got this. And the other thing too is you're still not alone. You can go to your illustrator, go, hey, Joe, I help. I need help. What do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Right. So. Okay, so let's go to a couple fun things, and then I think we can. This has been interesting. Like it's been interesting. I very few people have. I'm gonna say as pure a reason to finish the stories you did, and it's actually kind of sweet, honestly. I hope that doesn't make you to It's just I don't. It's very cool that your friend, right, that friend that's no longer here, you care about them enough that you want to make sure that they are as part of your story as you're making them. And that's a real, again, I'm sorry, dude, it's a sweet thing. It really, really is. I hope that doesn't hit you the wrong way. It's just I'm not a sweet person and stuff, but no, but that's a really cool reason to tell.
No, and And honestly, I was even back then, I was a fan of what they were doing. I was a fan of their writing, and I just, I thought it would be
Yeah.
a real shame if the rest of the world didn't get to see
Yeah.
what he had made.
Like I said, it's a sweet. I'm gonna. And last time I say it, it's a really sweet thing.
Thank you.
That all said, yeah, that's a really. I've never heard of a reason like that before, and it's really really interesting what moves people. But I have to ask, because you did do comics, you did come into this kind of on your own. Everybody's got a book that kind of goes like, okay, I can do this. I want to do this. What was your book? There had like there had to be a book you like. Let's see, you did your anything in you started in 2002. So what cool comic that you were reading when you went to the comic shop? And you said, "Oh my god, I gotta do something like this. Or I gotta do my own cool thing." What was it?
I can answer that. That would have. There were a couple of them. The first one was Beanworld. Larry Marder's Beanworld.
Okay.
Have you ever read Larry Marder's Beanworld?
No, I haven't actually. It's someone I don't know very well at all. So
it's published by Dark Horse now. It was originally published by Eclipse back in the 80s. And I was just really taken with it. And I actually did an entire fan comic of Beanworld. Actually, I have it here. Here's my little Kinko's.
The Kinko's edition of it. Nice.
Edition of Beanworld, yeah.
Okay.
There you go. It was very approachable because the art style of Beanworld was maybe just a step up from stick figures. These beans that characters that he drew were just ovals with dots for eyes and lines for arms and legs. But he told this really moving story with it. It was almost poetry in a way. And he was always publishing like fan art in the back, even by young children. And he would have these sections in the back of the issues called "Do It Yourself Beanworld," where he would post like a 4-panel comic strip with blank word balloons. So he was very much encouraging people to kind of take Beanworld and make it their own, and use that as like a launching point for their own creativity. So I think that maybe inspired me to do like my little fan comic of Beanworld.
Which is really cool. So what was the other one? Because he had a couple. So
the other one was the comic that as I went into high school, was probably the comic I was the most obsessed with, which was Scud the Disposable Assassin. I was head over heels over this comic. I didn't have any tattoos at the time, but maybe I would have gotten a Scud tattoo if I was old enough.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, that wasn't my thing, but I could see why people dug him. Like I could see I could see why it wasn't my thing, but I could see why people did it. Okay.
Oops. Hold on a second. Sorry.
No, none. Hey, it's real life. Like I say, folks, we are live. So, telephone ringings, cats, babies, they have all shown up on the stream at some point or another, and kids too. Kids have taken over and become the star of the show. It just happens, right? So, welcome to the Twitch era. But it sounds to me like honestly, it sounds to me like you enjoyed the fun of comics. It wasn't superheroes, just the fact that you could imagine any world you want to in comics, and you can make it real. Yeah. That's a very that's a very appealing. Like you can I love superhero books. Don't get me wrong, but comics are so much more than superheroes, and you came into an era of. So one of my favorite books from your era is Dreamland Chronicles.
Okay, I haven't read that one.
Okay, Scott Christian Seva did it, and it came out a little past you. It was 2005, the first one.
Yeah.
So you do these giant, this was back in the days of they did an all ages comic universe, and this book I looked at this was such a cool. I've never seen anything like it. Um, and he does these incredible figures and drawings and stuff like that, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, anyone can do a cool comic, and he did an amazing run with that, with those characters and runs. I never got to the end of it, unfortunately, because I got caught up with my own life and stuff. But those are the kind of books that make you go, comics can literally be about anything you want them to be. So, and again, coming to today, coming to your Kickstarter, and coming to like everybody's Kickstarters today. I mean, the cool thing about this particular era, and you're part of it as much as anybody else, is you can tell all the story, you can make all those worlds in your head come real, and there are people out there that are out there to read your stuff, which I think is a damn cool thing. And not just you, like there's so many good talents out there. It's an incredible time. I'm very curious what the comic book industry looks like in about 3 years.
Yeah.
Because I think comic stores carry more books like you than they do DC and Marvel. DC and Marvel always have a place in a comic shop. They're established, but I'm looking around and I'm seeing this, and I think we've hit that moment. We've hit that point where it's like, comics aren't just superheroes anymore, and they're not just for the, hey, it's cool. I'm almost 40. I think you're just a little older than me, maybe just a little younger than me. I'm not sure. We're about the same age, give or take. And it's like, we're not the cool kids anymore. X-Men and Harley Quinn and Batman and Superman were for us. The people coming up, it's going to be a brand new. There's a possibility to reach audiences that comics bookshops and Diamond and all these places have stopped caring about. And I'm very curious. What that's going to look like. Years. You seem popular.
Yeah. I just got a message from my wife that the bird cage is open and we have cats in our house. So,
are you gonna have to go rescue your bird?
I might have to go investigate this.
Okay, so then we might have to call this a slightly early exit. Nah, I think we're coming to the end of the interview anyway. So, before you go rescue your birds from possibly rescue your birds, why don't you tell people about your book, where people can actually go check out your Kickstarter, and if you have to bail, I'll bug you afterwards for some extra details and information, and I'll see about what's the term, wrapping up the show. So
sure.
Yeah.
So the comic on Kickstarter, it's called Bug Hunt. You can find it. I can type in the link. Do I have a chat?
I'm looking it up right now. Just talk about your book.
Sure. It's a sci-fi action adventure about a blue-collar space exterminator named Blake Campbell, who mistakenly ends up on a space station being attacked by robot spiders. And they end up turning to him because his skill set might just be what helps them to save them from this mess. So it's running on Kickstarter now until August 17th. I have a beautiful cover by Erwin Arosa. I did a variant cover. The interior art is by Joe Wong. We have an animated flip book reward that I am currently creating an animation for. And we are also offering some stuff like art commissions or cameos in the book.
All right, give me a quick second here as Restream booted me out just as I was gonna do this. There you go, folks, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Kickstarter link right there, and you can go check it out right now and definitely take a bid and a look see here. Just gotta go rescue it. Just go rescue your birds. I can go bug you. I basically just do my basic wrap up here. So if you enjoy what you listen to or watched here tonight, click the follow button on Just Joshing. Hit that on Twitch. On YouTube, I'm Joshua Pantellarusco. Hit the like and subscribe button there. I am a freelancer. If you're looking for writing, if you're looking for like podcasting, or if you're looking for comic book editing, ironically that you brought that up here. I am your man. My book Alice Zero is nominated for the Elgin Award from the Fantasy Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association. Alice 1 comes out November 1st. Stay inspired, everybody. Keep shining in the dark. Keep making beautiful things. I might be here tomorrow night. I'm supposed to be, but I'll find out for sure a little bit later on tonight. If not, I will be here for sure Wednesday and Thursday. But until then, guys, stay inspired, and I will see you guys later.